Welcome to the Village Talks. This is a space where physiology meets lived experience, where we talk honestly about the body, the nervous system, relationships, and the real questions families are asking without fear-based narratives or a one-size-fits-all answer. We're your hosts. I'm Dr. Jaimy.
And I'm Dr. Brittany. We're chiropractors, perinatal specialists, and humans who work closely with families through preconception, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and early parenthood. Whether you're preparing for pregnancy, currently pregnant, newly postpartum, raising a little one, or supporting someone who is, you're in the right place.
Let's get into today's conversation.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. This is part one of many of our postpartum series that we're going to do. We do talk a lot about pregnancy, birth, but postpartum parenting is also part of that conversation. So we're going to start with today's episode is going to be about what no one prepares you for in postpartum. It's a big conversation, but we think it's really important. I have my own thoughts based off of what my clients have been through and what I've seen in practice. And then Dr. Jaimy has that and her own experiences with postpartum. So let's kind of dive in.
Yeah, I think in recent years, there is a lot more attention to postpartum planning.
Yeah.
A little bit more conversation about the expectations of postpartum recovery beyond just a handout when you go home after birth. So I do think there's a lot more preparation and a lot more realistic expectations now compared to when I was newly postpartum. But it's really hard to cover all the topics in visits with your birth care provider. If you do have friends and family that have had babies, maybe you were in it with them, right? Maybe you were invited into that early postpartum space. And so you have a little bit of a realistic expectation. Maybe you have a doula who's given you a lot of real life scenarios and sort of set the stage for what this is really going to look like. But I still think most parents are going into this phase relatively unprepared. And there will still be at least a couple of things that they were like, what? Nobody told me about this. I always feel like the minions, like, what? Like, no, why didn't anybody tell me? And I've had to say sometimes to patients afterwards too, I'm like, it's a delicate balance because there's already enough that you're trying to anticipate and process during pregnancy and birth. And if we really told you all of the things, one, it's overwhelming, and two, I think it's terrifying. So we're trying to find the balance between we want you to be prepared and anticipate, like set yourself up for success with support and hopefully have enough of an expectation of the challenges of this period that you're not completely unprepared. But also we don't want you more terrified of going home with your baby than you were of giving birth.
All of it's more from an empowered standpoint, I would say, and how the language we use and how we present the information for sure. When it comes to other people, I can't speak for them, but I know for us, we do it in more of an empowering way because it is a lot of information, and this will be a topic for another conversation, but moms lose some gray matter in their brain. So why you're so forgetful is because there's a lot of reprocessing happening and a lot of repatterning happening. So that's a different conversation. But why we present it the way we do is because we know you're not going to remember everything that we tell you. But we're going to do it in a way that's more digestible. So when it does pop up, you'll be like, I heard this somewhere before. Oh, ding, light bulbs go off.
And I think it's also why it's so important to have ongoing support postpartum, because there will be things that pop up. Maybe you were told and you don't remember, right? Because your brain is repatterning. Your brain is swimming in hormones. You are sleep deprived. The amount of calories that are dedicated to healing and milk production, if you're lactating, it is a wild ride. And so having a support system, having a resource network is, I would say, the biggest thing that we encourage, because there is not an exhaustible list of all the possible things that could happen that we could give you even if we wanted to.
Absolutely,
So I think the one of the biggest things that surprises people is how many surprises you're about to be presented with.
That's great. Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of parents will take a newborn care class. And so you're kind of given your, you know, red flags, yellow flags, things to watch out for with your baby.
Normal, this is not.
Yes. And there is so much focus on the baby, as there should be, because you are responsible for keeping the tiny human alive. But that's all entirely separate from this conversation, right? When we talk about postpartum, we're talking about the lived experience of the person who gave birth. And who surrounds them and who is helping them keep the tiny human alive while you are bleeding and leaking and lactating and your brain is repatterning. Yes.
And we're hungry and we're thirsty and all the things.
Yes. Yeah. So I think, you know, biggest surprises would be that there are a lot of surprises. And so, I think having someone that you trust that you can call on who is able to use their better functioning brain to say, so actually this is pretty normal and here's how we deal with it. Because it's also not like, well, this is normal, so you suffer. This is normal, suck it up and deal with it. This is really normal and here are the ways that we can manage it or deal with it until we reach a point where either it resolves, which is normal, or it doesn't, which isn't normal. And where's the line there? What's the time frame for that? You know, do we need to have other people involved in this? Do we need to be calling a care provider? Do we need to talk to your partner about the emotions that you're expressing? Do we need to bring in outside support like a doula or a partner or lactation support? Do we have a parent that can step in? So I think it's anticipate surprises and set yourself up with at least one reliable resource that is able to have a candid conversation with you about when and if you need to be bringing other people into the picture.
I think, absolutely. And one of the biggest things that I see that no one prepares, that are prepared for in postpartum is breastfeeding, if we choose, but even bottle feeding. But we are taught it's natural, it'll happen, do all these things, it'll be fine. But what people don't realize is that breastfeeding is a skill for you and for your baby.
And neither of you have ever done it before.
Exactly.
Or maybe you have breastfed a baby already, but it'll be different.
It'll be very different, right? We say this a lot, every pregnancy is different, every birth is different, every postpartum different, baby is different. So that side of things is, especially, you know, with my training in lactation and all that, it is so nuanced and there are so many different things, but especially if you've never done it before, you can take a breastfeeding class, which is very helpful and I highly recommend it. At the same time, you're still not doing hands-on yet. And so having someone there can be really helpful to walk you through it, but understand that it takes time. Yes, we have these different patterns. We start suckling in utero. We start learning how to swallow in utero for babies and things like that. But also, it's a pattern that they've built in utero that they're carrying out into the world that then they have to also learn new skills to be able to do it. Yes, the reflexes are there. Absolutely. Majority of the time, it's still a skill set. They still have to get strong. Their tongue has to work well. Their jaw has to work well. Their cheek has to work well. The roof of their mouth is involved in that. Everything is involved when it comes to feeding.
And I think, you know, what you said earlier, like you haven't done this before, right? So it's kind of like birth. You haven't had a baby before. You take all the classes so that you have as much knowledge as you can entering in this birth process. But the majority of people are not going through the birth process alone. You have ongoing support because you don't have experience. It really needs to be the same for breastfeeding, right? There's a good chance that this relationship, you know, gets off to a quick and easy start and there really are no complications. But that's not the experience for the majority of people. And so one, understanding who it is that supports you through this and having access to them and having ongoing support is going to be really important as you navigate and get skills in something that you haven't done before. I think there are a lot of aspects to pregnancy and postpartum where we expect that we have to suffer or like, well, this is supposed to be hard. And I'm like, there's a difference between something that is challenging and something that is creating suffering.
Yes.
Right. And if you have no plans to breastfeed, great. You know, you may still need lactation support.
Yes.
You know, maybe you are planning to exclusively pump, right? You're like, I'm home from work for this amount of time. Breast milk is, I don't have to pay, I don't want to say it's free, but you don't have to pay extra for it.
Yeah.
Right. So there are people who are like, yeah, like I'm lactating, let's give the baby milk, but I'm not interested in the breastfeeding process. Or you may go straight to bottles, but you've tried 6 different bottles and baby's still choking, right? Yep. Like you may still need some feeding support at some point. So understanding who these people are, how they help and support you regardless of what feeding looks like for your baby. Yeah. Because this isn't always a simple process. And I think that you may perhaps be alone in your home with a partner who also doesn't know what you're doing, but there is a lot of help out there. There are a lot of resources out there. If you've reached out to someone and you haven't gotten the answers you're looking for, you haven't gotten the information or tools or suggestions or ideas to help you continue through this process, you got to keep asking, you got to keep looking, which I know can be a frustrating process. But I do think there's like, well, I saw a lactation support person and they suggested this and I've been doing this for 3 weeks and nothing's changing. Yeah. You got to mix it up. Yep. Absolutely. You know, maybe everything doesn't get sorted in a day. You know, that takes me to, if we're done talking about breastfeeding, I think another area that surprises people is sort of what the healing journey looks like. Oh, yeah. And what isn't normal. Yeah. And a lot of that depends on your birth. So healing from a vaginal or pelvic birth looks really different than healing from a cesarean or a belly birth. So different set of expectations here, but you also need to have a baseline for what is normal and when do I ask for support? Yep. When do I need to reach out and get help or get answers? I do think that there is a huge spectrum for what is really considered normal through here. Yeah. But it kind of comes down to the same thing. Like, were you given expectations about what it feels like to have stitches and how it feels as that tissue heals, and that if you've had any local medication, what happens when that wears off? Yeah. Everybody usually gets a peri bottle. I'm like, did they teach you how to use it? Yeah. That's what did they show you? Yeah. Did they teach you how to use it? Do you know that you can put like herbal sitz bath in there?
When can you do a sitz bath? All of that.
Yep. So I think having those answers or having someone that can talk you through that, talk about sitting. We deal with so many people who are experiencing, tailbone discomfort. It wasn't there before. It wasn't there immediately after birth. We're seeing it develop. It has to do with sitting. You're sitting on inflamed, irritated tissues. Like how do we support those tissues? Get a hemorrhoid donut, right? Yeah. They're inflatable. They're cheap. They're easily accessible.
Towels are great for lumbar support. Roll up like a burrito. All of those things. We have to. It's hard with those types of things because yes, we are sleep deprived. Yes, we are in a different pattern, routine than we're used to, and it can still be really empowering, really beautiful if we have the right tools to set us up well. Yeah. And something as simple as a hemorrhoid donut and lumbar support can be game changing. So you're not putting too much pressure on your tailbone because you're trying to sit back and protect your tissues, but then also it's affecting our spine and we're hunched over like this because we're breastfeeding or bottle feeding or holding a baby. And I call it the adorable baby syndrome because we're like, oh my God, you're so cute. And then you're like, why does my neck hurt?
Just stare at them all day.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So setting up well, just with our posture is a game changer in postpartum.
Yep. Yeah. It'll help reduce increased tension and discomfort in the areas where we're already more likely to have it just because we spend so much more time sitting in this phase.
Absolutely.
So I think just an explanation of or some baseline understanding of what does healing look like for all these different tissues. What's a normal timeline? When do we need to get somebody else involved? There is definitely a lot of like, well, of course my tailbone hurts. I just had a baby. That might not be why. Of course my neck hurts. I'm looking down all day. That may not be why. Of course I feel terrible all over I just had a baby. No.
Yeah.
Do we
Don't
have a
love
headache? Yeah. Like, you know, what is a typical timeline and what are the typical things we expect to experience as a part of this healing process?
Yeah.
And that's a lot more than just if you pass a clot bigger than an egg, call us.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's important too. But that can't be like the one thing that we're on the lookout for.
Totally.
Timeline for, you know, what does bleeding look like? Timeline for when does milk come in?
Yeah.
Your milk doesn't come in hours after your baby is born.
Yeah.
So just normal timelines. I hear moms stressing about, you know, baby's 2 days old and then my milk hasn't come in. Yeah, that's pretty normal. That's a normal timeline there.
Yeah.
Your baby doesn't need milk. They need colostrum.
Yep.
Right? We're setting the foundation for their immune system. This contains exactly what they need.
Everything they need.
Yeah. So I think, just kind of setting realistic expectations for what that healing process looks like. And then the same thing, like, who are we asking?
Yeah.
When maybe things aren't going as expected.
Yeah.
And, you know, for us, I think that the physical recovery is a lot of it in those first few weeks.
Yeah.
And just telling people like, no, like you shouldn't be bleeding this much.
Yeah.
You shouldn't not be able to sit because it feels like your stitches are stabbing you.
Yeah. You shouldn't be bleeding for 8 weeks.
Yeah. You shouldn't not have a bowel movement for 2 weeks. Like, I mean, there's a whole lot of a lot of aspects of this system have been through a lot.
Yep.
And so what can we do to support this healing process and when do we need to get other people involved?
Yeah. The other thing I don't think enough people are aware of, and this goes for both parents, is protecting our hands and our wrists. Because what we tend to do, especially if it's our first, we tend to, what I call the claw hand, because we want to mold our entire body to baby to make sure that they're safe and supported. But what we're also doing are a lot of fine motor skills in our hands that we don't do all the time, that we are now doing all the time. Snaps, buttons, zippers, diapers, wipes, putting baby in the car seat and buckling and doing all these things that are little tiny muscles in our hands and in our wrists aren't used to doing all the time. And now you're doing them every day, all day, for the most part. And so what we can get is what is called mom thumb or dad thumb, where we get really, really sharp shooty pain around our wrist area and go up until the elbow, things like that. People don't realize happen. And so it's like the number one thing in our postpartum visit. I'm like, both of you protect your wrists at all costs, because I don't want you in wrist braces and I don't want you to have to feel like you can't support your baby. Because when we have this type of pain and thing going on in our wrist, then it goes into our mentality of, oh my gosh, I can't pick up my baby. And then it goes into, oh my gosh, I can't support them. And now I don't feel safe to hold them. And it becomes this cycle. So that's one of the things that I tell parents all the time that they're not necessarily aware of either.
Or they're doing it anyway and forcing themselves in this position because it's now become the habit or feels like the only safe, supportive way to hold their baby.
Exactly.
And the issue continues to progress and get worse.
Yeah.
I mean, really any kind of physical pain, right? When we talk to patients about when to come and see us specifically, right? We give them a general timeline, but I always say, like, if you get 2 to 3 days out from your birth and you're experiencing pain, right? Not soreness, not tissue healing, not, I feel like I've a little bit like I've been hit by a truck and like, wow.
Yeah.
But especially musculoskeletal pain.
Yeah.
Don't dismiss it. There are things you can absolutely do at home to try to address it. And if, you know, some of those home care things aren't helping, for sure, we want to bring somebody into the picture, or at least be calling and asking, like, what can I do? Yeah.
Anything surprise you in your postpartum recovery that, like, you wish you would have known? Because for you, I think it's a little bit different of a perspective, right? Because you're in this space and you're in the space before you had kids. But was there anything that kind of was like, oh, like I knew about it, but I didn't know about it?
I mean, yes and no. I think with my first, I don't know if I had an expectation. I think, like most people, I didn't give anywhere near as much thought to it as I should have. We had done some meal planning we had planned to have support in place. My mom came and stayed with us, and I always joke, she's like my little house elf. She's always busy. She's, like, she's happy to do the chores, right? Like, let the dogs out, cook, do dishes, fold laundry, run to the store. Like, that, at least for me, was very helpful. So I could be focused on resting and healing and baby.
Which should be that for the first couple of weeks anyway.
So I do think
asterisk.
that's an important distinction for parents is, you don't need help with baby. Like, you might need help navigating breastfeeding, right? And it doesn't mean we don't want somebody to hold the baby while we're showering.
Exactly. Yeah.
But, if you are breastfeeding, most of what is happening with that baby is on you, right? And literally physically on you, because your baby doesn't know that you're two separate people.
Yeah.
And so every time that baby is not on you, baby's nervous system will be in a state of distress, at least really early on, because baby's nervous system does not know that it is separate from you physically. So it is a lot of infant care. Somebody else has got to do everything else. And so if you do typically carry the majority of the load in terms of household management, somebody else has got to do that.
So that's you had your mom there to do it.
So that's the type of help that is often really supportive, at least in the first couple of weeks, so that you can focus on resting and healing and bonding. With our second, timing wise, my second came ahead of his due date. And so while we had planned for my mom to come ahead of my due date, he planned to come. He's been in a hurry from day one. He came even a couple of days ahead of that. And my mom lives out of state. So even though I called her and I was like, hey, I think I'm having a baby today, by the time she called me back and was like, here's my plan, she left a voicemail the moment that he was born. So, and was like, okay, I'm going to be there Wednesday. And I was like, awesome, he's here now. So, but actually this worked out really well for us because it wasn't our first baby. We had him at the birth center. So I was like chomping a bit, like, yeah, just get me home. And then we did have sort of this 48 hours of just the four of us, which was really cool.
I think it's so important.
It was really valuable. And we were not in a state of distress because we did know what we were doing. At least we had a baby before. So that, yes, my children were very different and those postpartum experiences were very different. But that was not stressful for us. That actually was really, really valuable. And then my mom came in a couple of days later and kind of, took over managing the things, which was lovely. We had an extra set of hands for our toddler. I think when there are older kids in the mix, that's kind of a unique challenge. So you really do have to think about who's going to help us out with kiddo, right? Like keeping them in routine can be really valuable if they are in some type of school, if they're doing some type of classes or lessons. I see some parents where, depending on cold and flu season, like they don't want to send a kiddo to daycare because they're bringing home germs all the time. And I'm like, yep, that's fair. Their routine is impacted and they're going to navigate this new baby a little bit more smoothly if we're able to preserve routine where we can. So I think that I feel like I planned for what I could and I anticipated what I could. I do think the transition from 0 to 1 was really challenging for us in terms of our relationship, our roles. I like to cook and my husband doesn't. So that was a task that I traditionally took on. And I did not have the energy or the desire to cook.
Can't imagine why.
After my daughter was born. And so, that it took us some time to kind of figure that out. I think that the roles that you traditionally have, I don't want to say traditional roles, but the roles that you traditionally have in your relationship often shift. And so I think that wasn't something that we were prepared for. And there were more arguments than communication early on. There was frustration because we were both sleep deprived and there were demands of us that weren't there before. I think navigating conversations with family. I have found that I am a person who has a little bit easier time setting and holding boundaries than some other people. And so I tried to establish that early in terms of what I could handle, right? And I get stressed out by having house guests, and it's not about the guests, right?
You feel like you have to host.
Yes, like I want things to be clean and organized, and I want to be able to, in my perception, increase their enjoyment by making sure that like meals are planned and activities are planned and things like that. You can't do that when you're home with a new baby. So, you know, that knowing that about myself, I'm like, I need to not really probably have people coming into the house for a while because I know that increases my stress. They're not increasing my stress. I am increasing my stress. And so trying to plan for that and reduce that. I think that was probably, I'm not saying I did that. I'm saying I realized in my first postpartum that I should have done that and that I needed to do that for myself and that it was about me and not them. And so then planned that very intentionally with the second of having some more time or having people limiting visits or maybe not staying in the house with us. I think that was, that made for a little bit smoother postpartum experience with my second compared to my first.
And I do think it's smoother too because you're figuring out who you are as parents, and it is now your family unit. Your parents had you, and now you have yours, and they did it their way, and you have to do it your way. But it's really hard to find your way when you have all this outside noise of people who have done it before. Great. I'm so glad, and I really appreciate the feedback. But in the first, I would say at least the first 2 weeks is really meant to be for your bonding time as this new family unit is now your transition into parenthood and raising children in the next generation. You got to figure out who you are in that. Obviously, it's going to shift and change. But if in the first 2 weeks you have all this outside chaos that doesn't allow you to tap into that intuition on both parts, that can be really challenging too. And then instead of being empowered to make those decisions, what I have found is parents slowly start to give away the decision making of all the things that kind of happen. And then there can be resentment that leads into it. Well, I really didn't want to do it, but they said it was going to be the best thing for me and blah, blah, and all that kind of stuff. Right. So that also, I think, really sets up the game for parenting too.
Yes. And I think the outside chatter also leads to a lot of confusion. Right. So you may have had these thoughts or ideas and maybe this is or isn't how it's happening. And then you're getting this external information or advice that might be counter to what you thought you wanted to do. I do think people are trying to help, especially if they see you struggling. But even just early on saying we want to try to figure this out. I want to try to tap in and listen to my intuition. And I will, I love you. I trust you. If I have questions, I will come to you and ask you. But I respectfully ask you to withhold your opinions until I've come and asked you for them. And if you think about the people in your life, you already know who's giving unsolicited advice. And these are the same people that will give you unsolicited advice after baby arrives.
Almost tenfold.
And so, there may be people that you trust and you go ask. You might be the type of person who can receive and here comes the information and off it goes. And you may be the person who everything that everyone says to you feels like judgment and you internalize it and it creates self-doubt. So part of it is you have to know how you receive advice and information and how you receive it from different people. You have to know, are you someone who will ask for advice? Because a lot of people just will not. And this is where we end up struggling because trying to figure things out for yourself is important. Who you are as a parent, who this new little human is, the dynamic of your relationship with your co-parent, all of that. But there's also trying to strike the balance between me figuring this out on my own and I'm struggling to figure this out. Or what I'm figuring out still isn't working. And now I need to ask for outside advice. And that's where we go to the people that we trust, whether those are people in our personal lives or those are professionals that we've connected with or we've hired.
Yep.
I do think it is hard not to incorporate, especially when you're struggling.
Yeah.
And people say something that's different and you're like, okay, let me try this. Okay, let me try that.
Yeah.
Okay, like I'll try anything. I'm desperate. Don't try 6 new things in one day.
Yeah. It's so much.
Don't do the same thing for 6 weeks. Right? Like it really is a lot.
Yeah.
And so having a little bit of an understanding before you hit that postpartum period of how do you process outside information and advice. And then think about, with some intention when you're not in the moment, of how you would potentially like to handle that after baby gets here.
Yep.
And sometimes that is setting a hard boundary of no one sets foot in our home for 15 days. And sometimes it's having a flexible boundary of, we're going to kind of see how it goes when baby gets here. And we ask that you respect the choices we make at that time.
Yeah.
I had an experience of having to explain to someone the excitement and enthusiasm of being a grandparent. And they were in a situation where one set of parents is local and one set of parents is really far away. And so it meant the local parents were going to have immediate access to this baby. They were like, you can come to the hospital, you have 1 hour. But then telling the out of state grandparents that we want to be alone for 2 weeks. Except you're not alone for 2 weeks. These people have access to like a fresh newborn. Yeah. And I said, I 1000% understand what you are coming from, where you are coming from, and you're protecting your home space. I said, and I don't know the nuances of these 2 relationships, but I could see how this set of parents out of state is going to feel slighted and build some resentment because the other parents are getting access. And it's just geography. I'm like, but you could offer to them, if you're willing to come here and see this baby
for
1 hour in the hospital
and then go home.
But once we go home, you're not staying with us and you're not coming to our house. And that's what grandma did. She flew in after baby got here, like in and out. I don't know if it was the same day, but it was within 24 hours.
Great.
And everybody was happy.
Great.
Right? It was like the equal access.
Yep.
She was willing to do the work to come here and make that happen. Yeah. And for them as parents, like their boundaries were still respected.
Yeah.
But everybody was happy, win-win, right? It could have been like, oh, it's not fair because they live there and we can't afford to come, or I can't get the time off work or whatever. That could have been how that played out too.
Totally.
In which case, then it's not fair to not give access to the people who are here.
Yeah.
But it's
nuances.
Balance. Yeah. Can you give a little bit and keep them happy without sacrificing what you really want and need?
Yeah.
In terms of that. And some people find those boundaries and those balances easier than others, right? If you're willing to compromise, but somebody else isn't, that's really hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. Always so good. There's so much that goes into postpartum, but that's why this is a series.
Yeah.
I think that's a good stopping point for today. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. Things that maybe you didn't know about postpartum recovery or in your own experience, or questions that you have about any of the things that we talked about or things that you've heard, even if it's been on Instagram and online, let us know, on TikTok and all the things. And then we'll see you next time. If you found today's episode helpful, you can subscribe, share it with a friend, or leave a review. It helps this podcast reach the families who need it most. You can find us at Belly Bliss in Denver and online for resources, workshops, and support. Until next time, take care of your body and trust its wisdom.